Hey, everybody. I'm Joe McGovern, awards reporter here at TheWrap, and we are happy to have you for our 2024 awards screening of Superman, the Christopher Reeve story, with director Peter Itetke and director-producer Ian Bonhot. We're going to show you the trailer for the movie first, and then we're going to go right into the conversation with our directors. And to our audience, please take part in the live chat of the stream, share your thoughts about the movie, and let us know where you're tuning in from. So let's take a look at the trailer for Superman.
Everybody's looking for a hero. I am not a hero. That was a part. I played the part. I'm not that man.
Hands down, he was Superman from day one.
I realized that if I could pull off this part, it would change my life.
John Houseman said, Mr. Reeve, it is very important to become a serious classical actor. Unless, of course, they offer you a load of money to do something else.
He convinced me when I first met him that he would fly.
Doing things with my dad. It was all about activity and action. Riding bikes, playing soccer, skiing.
Carpe diem, Al!
My dad was very competitive, and he didn't necessarily slow down.
We said goodbye, and he gave this wave. That was the last time I saw him on his feet.
Mr. Reeve currently has no movement or spontaneous respiration.
Superman, crazy. Just that simple little thing over the horse.
I'd ruined my life and everybody else's. I won't be able to ski, sail, throw a ball to Will. Won't be able to make love to Dana. Maybe we should let me go.
She came flying in, and she just yelled, "I love you. I love you."
And then she said the words that saved my life. You're still you, and I love you.
He and Robin were such good friends because they could match each other.
Robin also had struggles that he dealt with his whole life, and I think that they both were aware of darkness.
Brother Chris is fighting like crazy. When you find people who fight like that but still keep their humanity, that gives you great hope.
That is tough because I can feel him, but he can't feel me.
It must have been hell for my mom, too, knowing what she had lost.
I felt I needed to do something, not just for myself, but for everyone else in the same condition.
The fact that Superman was in a wheelchair and was willing to go public with it was huge.
Help is on the way.
The Christopher and Dana Reeve Paralysis Act.
People are literally walking because of him.
What is a hero? My answer was that a hero is someone who commits a courageous action without considering the consequences. Now my definition is completely different. I think a hero is an ordinary individual who finds the strength to persevere and endure in spite of overwhelming obstacles. I wouldn't have missed this for the world.
Welcome back. It is my pleasure to welcome Peter and Ian. Thank you so much, guys, for joining for this conversation. Thank you for this project. And, I think that the viewers who have just seen the trailer have just seen sort of the proof of concept. And I know from being in a theater and seeing it, people were crying from those 3 minutes. I mean, all over. I looked online and saw that the official trailer has like 10 million views, and you go down the comments, and it's one after the other people who say how touched they are just by the thought of Christopher Reeve. So in a way, what does that kind of hark back to your original impulse that this was a story that could could be told. I mean, it's 20 years. He died 20 years ago, October, and we're getting to a point now where, like everything, people start to become forgotten about. Tell us about now doing this and just kind of your deep impulse and intuition, knowing that this was going to work.
I mean, I think that's one of the things we always we take our time before choosing our projects, the film we're going to work on or the film we're going to make, and we felt that, yeah, exactly as you said, we felt that that's Chris's story had enough elements to bring out a lot of emotions, and I think the reaction you mentioned about the trailer or even the film itself warranted that. I think you mentioned as well the many years that have passed since his death. But what we felt, and that's how we constructed the film, is that the importance he had for the DC Marvel universe being the first one and being so seminal and so, there's been quite a few other Superman, but nobody believes in Superman as much as they believe in Christopher Reeve being Clark Kent and Superman. So however long passes, I think Christopher Reeve won't be forgotten because of that role, and that's why we make that role so central to the way we construct the story, as I was just saying. But then afterwards, what happened to Chris, starting as the sort of invincible, all-round superhero to, break his neck and ending up as a quadriplegic, living, depending on the vent to survive, and quite a few people to keep him alive, and how his family got together and how he rebuilt his life from the depth of despair and wanting to kill himself. We felt that that's, all those elements just were such strong, fertile ground to build a very, very strong emotional narrative structure.
I mean, the one thing I'd add, because that's completely right. We really felt the emotion that latent in the story, but what we didn't know, which is in the trailer that we discovered as we were making it, was the importance of people like Dana. We didn't know the family. We didn't know about Dana's story. We barely knew the kids. We had a couple of early Zooms with them, but getting to know them more and more, it became clear that it wasn't just the Superman story. It was the story of this really quite beautiful family.
Yeah. And I'm going to ask a lot about the kids who are so integral to the success of this movie. But, Ian just mentioned your other work, and I think that's important to talk about because, in a way, if you could have engineered two previous films that would have so perfectly led into this one, it couldn't been done better. So tell us about I've seen both of them, but just you tell us about the two previous movies and why it made you the perfect candidates for this gig. There they are.
There they are.
Oh,
yeah. And Alley Cats. No, I mean, I remember Ian sort of in one of our very earliest discussions sort of is turning around to me and saying, this is actually a perfect film for us to make, because obviously when we did McQueen, it was a biographical film, albeit about a British fashion designer, Alexander McQueen. But it really got us into a whole frame of mind of how do you tell a biographical story, and how do you find a structure that makes it work, that isn't sort of purely episodic, and how do you bring the emotion out of a story in which the lead protagonist is no longer with us.
Yeah.
And then when we made our second film, Rising Phoenix, that was very much in the whole area of disability sport. I mean, I hate actually using those words together because the Paralympics, which is what we're about, is about sport. The athletes just happen to have different kinds of disabilities. And that was the most extraordinary journey for us. I mean, just meeting the athletes, but also becoming much more aware than I think either of us had ever been about what it is to exist in this world, which is very ableist, just in all of its structures, and have a disability, and sometimes a severe disability, and have to grow up with that, and have to somehow integrate in society with that. So, that definitely attuned us to a whole world of dealing with disability issues, which we touch on in the film, but it is really about the Paralympics, as I say. So, you know, in this story, a biography and continuing to, you know, mine that whole area of disability, human rights, and so on, it really did feel like it was the ideal film for us to move on to. It did feel like it was fated.
The last thing I will add as well is just what is with McQueen, what we've learned is how do you tell a story which already a lot of people know quite a bit about?
Right.
You know, the fact that people know about Chris's accident and know about his death. He knew he was Superman. People knew about McQueen taking his own life and a lot of the seminal moment within his career and the fact that he had become. So how do you actually surprise an audience with elements that are already known? And I think that's one of the things that started to become one of our motto, where we want emotion to be over information. Emotion is what we're looking for. So even if you know a certain amount of things, as a viewer, we want, how can you find new ways to bring it to you that is still getting you so emotional, engaged with the story that you forgot almost all what you know to rediscover it.
Yeah. Now, and also when you were working on Rising Phoenix, you came across content involving Christopher Reeve, didn't you? Just while making that?
Yeah,
we did. I mean, it's. I don't want to go too overboard on it because it's important to bear in mind that Superman came to us via an archive producer who had made initial contact with the family. But it is absolutely true that while we were making Rising Phoenix, we saw footage of Christopher introducing the athletes to the 1996 Atlanta Paralympics about a year after his accident. And it was the first time, certainly, that I remember, and maybe I saw the Oscar speech when I was much younger, but it was the first time I really remember tuning into Christopher's sort of the way he had to speak, because he was on a ventilator, as Ian was saying before. So he could only speak on the exhale, and how he used that as almost like an oratorial trick, you know, in his whole way of sort of like the rhythm of how he spoke, and you know, and yeah, it was a beautiful moment. We couldn't actually fit it into Rising Phoenix, but it definitely stuck in our minds.
I mean, to Ian's point about trying to find something new, this is a case of a person. He became famous about 45 years ago, right? Who I have never known of a world in which he didn't exist in a big way, and I think that's true for a lot of people, even people older than me, because you know, when you were, let's say, a teenager when the original film came out, one of the things that I didn't know was that his advocacy for the underdog came way before his accident.
Yeah, correct. And sorry, I interrupted you. Sorry.
Yeah, please. I'd love to hear about discovering that, because that was new to me watching the film.
Yeah, I mean, there's one thing actually we don't completely cover in the film. You know, there's so much you can't fit everything in 90 minutes, 100 minutes in our case, 101. He created a sort of organization called the Creative Coalition with a few different actors, and they realized that as actors, they were getting more and more famous, and their voices could be used for greater goods. And they started to organize themselves and take, as you said, try to represent the underdog, maybe in the arts, in social elements, in environmental issues, and that was something he was extremely involved with, and he was really engaged with that, and that's how actually he got very friendly with Secretary of State John Kerry.
Yeah.
Because John Kerry at the time was a senator, and he was involved with loads of the environmental issues and passing some of the laws in the United States. And they started working together, and Chris lended his voice to the cause. I think that for us, what was really important with that is he explained very much why after the accident, he took on that role again, and he took on the baton, and in a way there was so few people with such a high level of injuries and disability present in the media or on the screen, and being a voice for the disabled people as well as for science. And he really took that on, and that we wanted to, in the film, to be able for the audience to see where that came from. It just didn't appear. He was already involved. Peter fell in love with a section where he can explain about him flying to Chile to help some actors and artists that were trying to fight against the Pinochet regime. So yeah, it's very much about. We didn't want to go too much into detail pre-accident because he became so relevant and so much part of his daily routine post-accident. We didn't want to have the repeat beat, but we allude to it. But that's something we learned, and we found amazing. And I think one thing we've learned is that Chris was not just an actor; he was much more than that.
Well, I mean, that's the best thing, is that if he had never had this accident, you could have made a documentary just about his work before what ultimately happened to him. I also remember hearing that he was fighting, in the press against a New York real estate developer back in the 80s. Interesting to hear that happened.
He was very keen on protecting New York's history and heritage, particularly in the theatre district. And I think there were a couple of property developments that Mr. Trump, President Trump, now was doing, that Chris locked horns with Trump over a number of times. I think there's one particular property development on the Upper West Side. So yeah, so that's interesting. But I think, as Ian was saying, I think that the pivot for all of this was seeing what an impact he could have after his trip to Chile.
Yeah.
Where he was asked by a Chilean playwright who's Ariel Dorfman, who was living in the States by then,
right,
as an emigre, and he was asked to basically go and just lend his voice and lend his support to a group of actors who were threatened with execution by Pinochet's shock troops. And yeah, he went. He spent 48 hours there, and I think that those 48 hours really were transformational for him, because he realized that he could have an impact and he could speak out, and people would listen to him because he had that whole reputation of being Superman.
Yes, and he was extremely active in the theater from his very beginnings, but also through the 80s. I mean, it wasn't something that he abandoned. So that the fact that Ariel Dorfman would know that makes total sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I want to talk about these three amazing kids. Well, I mean, they're adults now, but they're his kids. And after the movie has begun, and you have the opening pre-opening credits sequence, the preamble, the first person that we see on camera as an interview subject is Will Reeve, and I can't skirt around the fact that he just simply looks like Superman's son. So to see him there speaking and about his father, about the memories that sort of exist somewhat in archive for him, even because he was a little boy, it's extraordinary, because we get brought into this story through in this case, the youngest of the three, Will. I don't know. Tell us about cultivating a relationship with the three of them, and maybe especially Will, because in a way, Will's arc is different. Well, not different. It's just that those who see the movie will realize that where he begins and where he ends is extremely poignant.
I mean, just to answer as well to that, we the three kids are very relevant, because when we first physically met them, we realized that they all, in a way, if you blend them, the three together, put them in a cocktail mixer, and with them you'll have Chris. The three of them physically, but especially almost through their passion, have taken something from Chris. You mentioned Will, which is actually on Good Morning America. He's one of the reporters, so he's got the sort of entertainment gene. Alexandra is working for an NGO in Washington. So she calls herself the activist, the politician in the family. And Matthew is a filmmaker and has always been making film. He's written quite a lot of scripts. So he's the filmmaker, and all of them in a way it's Chris. And we like our characters to take part at the right time in the film, and because we start at that moment, and that moment Will and Matt and Al didn't live with Chris because they were with the first Chris versus partner. They didn't get married, but the mother of Matt and Al, so they lived
gay extent,
gay extent, where Will is actually living with his mom. And we really wanted to introduce Dana Reeve, so that's how we started, because we had that amazing pre-sequence which is very much about Superman and what it means to be him and fame, etc. And then we wanted to just break away from all of that and start with the intimacy of being at home with the Reeve family. But yeah, I mean, the film couldn't be done with them. And I think it's when we first started talking to them and when we met up with them, we just realized that the film was going to be much more than about Chris. It was going to probably be about them a lot. And then after doing the interview, they became even more and more relevant to the story, and discovering, as Peter said, that Dana and the family aspect of the Reeve family was much more important than just Christopher Reeve being a successful actor and the accident. There was much more to it. So I think that's why the children became so prominent. I think they gave us the interview thinking we would use a minute, 90 seconds, and they didn't realize they would become such a big part of the narrative. We start the film with them and we finish the film with them. And if you look, there's probably 30 to 40% of the film which is about them. And it's because the film is way more than about Superman and a very successful actor. It's about love, family, and legacy.
It's interesting what you say about Will, though, as as that connection. I was talking to Emily Cassie, who directed Sugarcane, and she, much smarter than me, she said, well, it's just so intriguing that you start that Superman is an orphan, and that the journey is to Will becoming an orphan at the end of the film, and that actually had never occurred to me. But it's
no, I mean, she's
claim credit for that, but
she's profound in that, because that didn't occur, but it kind of hits like a ton of bricks when you think of it. What were the recording sessions like? I've heard that they were like, some of them were a day long or 2 days. All three of the kids are, have tears in their eyes at various points of what we see in the movie. So I'm curious about what the sessions were like and how. I mean, it must have been grueling in a way, as well as obviously they wanted to participate and and to be a part of this story, but. This is it's tough. Anybody asked to talk about a loved one who is gone would struggle.
I think that's true. They all three of them had made. I think they'd said to us, but they'd also said to each other that they weren't going to leave anything out of the room. They were going to sort of absolutely commit to these interviews. And it was the first time they'd ever really done that, either individually or as the three of them. So they were well prepared to answer any questions that we had. And I mean, I remember that Matthew was the first interview, wasn't he? And I just remember the beginning of it, which we don't have in the film, where he, I think the question that we asked was, what are your earliest memories of your dad? And Matthew just went into this extremely lyrical, beautiful memory of being on his dad's shoulders. And at that moment, I kind of like had a feeling in my solar plexus that this was going to be an interview like nothing else that I'd ever witnessed, in terms of just, the eloquence and the emotion together are what makes them. And all three of them are incredibly eloquent and thoughtful, but they also, really let not the mask, but they really let their emotions out. I don't think we were expecting that would happen to the extent that it did, and to the extent that it did for everybody who was there. You know, we all felt the power of these interviews. The whole team. They were really quite remarkable, and each one was a day. But when you say a day, it doesn't mean that they were literally sort of like talking on camera for 12 hours. There were obviously plenty of breaks. You know, there's a lot of setup time, all of that. So they're probably on camera for about 3-4 hours each. And then we'd spend time, you know, between takes, between cards, and during lunch, just chatting around around the questions and answers they've given us.
But as you know, you only can make as good a film as the interviews you get. It's a bit like actors' performances. You can have a great script and you miss up, you know, the performances are not to the level. So I think it's even harder in documentary. That's one of the things Peter and I found really exciting, because, you know, it's in a way it's similar to observational documentary. You don't know. You can't switch somebody else for those 3 children. They are who they are, and they are the film, and they are the truth of Chris's truth. They are as close as an audience can feel of knowing something about Chris. You can use the rest of the family, you can use the partner, but the children has got a relevance. And there's something magical, I think, which is beautiful in the family, is we've been involved with project, or we've heard about project where there's a lot of toxicity within the legacy of a family. And in this case, the 3 of them are I'm sure they might argue and discuss things outside and never, but in front of us, they were always a united front. And in front of the world, they always a united front. And there's a real depth and intelligence, the way they sort of care and protect each other and not try to completely take the lead role. You know, Will was saying one time that they're not professional offsprings. They don't go around, we Christopher Reeve's children, or I'm Christopher Reeve's children. That's irrelevant. They are the children of their father, and their father happened to be Christopher Reeve, but they don't care about that. And I think that's something which is special, and that comes across on the screen, is the sincerity and the depth of who they are as human beings. And I think that really relate to us as an audience and as human beings ourselves.
Yeah. I'd also go as far as saying this, that I don't think the film would have been as effective without the participation of Gay Exton, who was Christopher Reeve's first partner, the mother of the first 2 children. Very private, by the way, as you know. She doesn't do interviews. She's not out there looking for, you know, the microphone. She's not on camera a lot, but I think when she is, it is very important in understanding his early career, and then understanding the complicated stuff, right? I mean, he was the product of a broken marriage, and he says somehow that's set the groundwork for his own relationship to break up. Tell me about meeting with her, convincing her. I mean, I you know, she's obviously very warm on camera, but as I say, private.
Very private. In fact, there was some archive which we cheekily thought of using, but it was just too cheeky and kind of the wrong tone, of Chris sort of like saying, Gay never gives interviews to anyone. And we thought of using that directly before we introduced her for the first time, but it just felt cheap, like a cheap trick.
Right. Yeah.
But you know, she is very private, and we had to woo her, for want of a better word, over quite a long period of time. You know, initially we just thought it would be great. We knew that she wasn't going to give us an interview. That's what we pretty much were expecting. So we just sort of like said to Alexandra and Matthew, whose mum Gay is, we would love to just meet her and have a conversation with her. So we met on Zoom with Alexandra while Gay was staying with her. And then that went well. So Gay agreed to meet us for lunch in London. And that started a kind of a correspondence between us that ultimately led to her agreeing to give an interview. We sort of like did at one point, we realized what a special interview it could be, because Gay represents such an important part of Christopher's life. It's the kind of the romance of becoming Superman and becoming the most famous movie star in the world is sort of also paralleled by their falling in love and becoming a couple and becoming the parents of two of the Reeve children. So, you know, we just felt that not to have her on screen, it became increasingly obvious to us that we had to try and do it. And, you know, we talked to Alexandra and Matthew about it as well. And they were sort of like, you know, yes, we understand. And they had a word with her and she had a word with us. And eventually that led to the shoot. And it was a really, yeah, it's a lovely interview. It's very warm and she's very candid. And it was very moving as well, because you could see, you know, when she talks about Christopher leaving her, you could see that she still loves him.
Yeah,
that's a powerful sort of moment and realization.
And I think, you know, what we alluded before, what Peter mentioned and we kept mentioning, is that the film had been evolving from just the biopic of a successful actor having represented to the family backstory, which sort of take a prime focus within the film. And there's no family without Gabe because of Matt and Al, but as well the way she actually found a balance with Dana Reeve about reconstructed family, and the fact that through Gay you feel very much about what it means to miss Chris still having split up, and what a great human being he was. Even if he wasn't going to be in the daily life of Gay, she still misses him now because he was a great human being.
Well, and, you know, also to, of course, mention Dana, the fascinating thing that I didn't know about her was that when in the early 2000s, when Christopher Reeve got some heat because he was in this commercial that you show in the movie where he's walking. I think it was for like an investment company or something, but it was a CGI thing where he's walking. And then he was criticized because by wanting so much to find a cure that was associated with feeling shame for being quadriplegic. And then it's clear in the movie that it's Dana who says, all right, then let's get make the tent much bigger here. Let's include everybody. Let's not take an attitude like it has to be one thing. You know, it's almost as if she was there to almost guide him philosophically a bit in a way that I'm sure he understood what the critiques were, but she had this core within her. It's clear in the film that guided him.
Yeah, I mean, you're completely right. I think one thing that potentially people who acquire disability, you have to go through the feeling of loss. You know, for Chris was the loss of the use of everything, basically. But then you start realizing that you're not the only one losing things. How Dana explained that she lost a lot. She lost the touch. She lost the warmth. She never lost the man she loved, but she lost all those little simple elements of life. So basically, she make us understand that someone having this level of disability will impact everyone in the family, will impact your partner. And that's what she wanted to bring to the table when she says, you know, it's not about cure only, it's about care and allowing people with disability and the people to look after them that are there every day, the carer, to be included within the Chris and Dana Reeve Foundation and the concept of helping. You know, it's not only about, you know, Chris was very determined, his mind was very one track focused and he would go for it. So in his mind, he wanted to find cures. She just managed to slightly made him not do a turn, but as you said, enlarging the tent to allow more space for the care aspect of, you know, of anyone living with a disability. And I think that's why the children and Will especially, you know, bring her to life so much by explaining how caring she was. How, you know, Susan Sarandon in the film says as well how she had to accept the children from the first marriage, but that's a character. She enlarged the tent of her life. She enlarged her heart to receive the children from somebody else. And Matt and Al consider her as a mother because she treated them as her own children. She would look after them and she all, I think it's Matt who says it beautifully at the end. That get me choked up every time that, before everything got really bad, she sat all three children to discuss the future because she considered all of three after Chris's passing her own children.
When things got bad for her, you mean?
And after Chris's accident, after Chris's death, and how they would move on as a family. And I think that's one of the other aspects. So it was about, it's almost like the care aspect of the foundation was exactly who she was. So they were intersect elements and themes of the story we could use to tell our story.
I mean, it's important to say as well that Chris was caring and was,
of course,
was empathetic himself, and took on the role of being, as he put it once, the president of a club that he never wanted to belong to. But he took that role very seriously. It's just that his focus was absolutely towards, initially with the foundation, was absolutely towards science and medicine and fixing things. And that's what caused the controversy.
And I've heard that today, if someone is injured, they can still call up the Christopher and Dana Reeve hotline, for assistance.
It's actually the only hotline in the US. So if you have an accident, if you're a mother or father, it happened to your child or to your partner or someone in the family, and you have no clue about what to do next, and it can be as simple as how to organize a house or a flat, where to give care, mental health issues to deal with it, how to have support. They're the only, and all of the helpline is actually attended by people with disability and same sort of level of disability. So the foundation is amazing, and we didn't make the film with the foundation, but we felt that they needed to be included, and we felt their message was really important, and we actually showed the film at the foundation, and it's been very beneficial for bringing the foundation back to the forefront of people's mind about still how important the issue, because they are on the front line to fight. And we're talking about probably 1 million people now in the US living with paralysis and spinal cord injury. So there's a lot of people affected. And that, as we said earlier, one person is affected, but you affect the whole circle around them. So even if the one person has had the accident, is paralyzed, you're going to have one extra or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, depending on how large the family will be affected. How do you get back to work, etc.?
I mean, that's something we also discovered when we were making the Paralympics. We suddenly realized we thought we were making a film about a dozen or so athletes, but actually what you start seeing is, that those who are supported by their families are the families. It's transformational. And the opportunities that kind of come out of that are extraordinary. I will just say that one of Chris's early major co-stars was in touch with me quite recently, and the daughter of the star, sort of asking, is there any that she knew someone who needed some help because they just had a disability? Do you know, who, from your research on the film, do you know who to get in touch with? And it was with great joy that I just immediately was able to say, this is the helpline number.
Wow.
So yeah, it's incredible that exists and is so immediate and useful, and the helpline is staffed by people with disabilities themselves. So yeah, it's amazing.
And all of this, I mean, no one would have blamed him if he just dealt with his injury in private. That would have been his right, and of course, to anyone. But the fact that by coming out on stage at the Oscars, which we see in the movie, but then over and over, and kind of saying that, you're not alone, I'm not alone, we shouldn't be ashamed. That's the legacy of that. That's why the helpline is still so effective. That's why we remember him. I want to finish by asking, because there's what I love about the film is the narrative arc of it. and we hear a little bit of it in the trailer. Actually, he's ruminating on the idea of heroism and who is a hero in the very beginning. It's the first words we hear in the movie, and it's also the last words we hear. But we can tell that he's on the ventilator in the end, and his definition has changed. He thinks that a hero is an ordinary person. How did your definitions change? I mean, what was the learning, the growing experience for you as well, and how important was it for you to land on that message at the concluding moment of the movie?
I think it started straight away. Had to land on a message. Started straight away from the structure of having the superhero element throughout. The fact that from a very early on, we said that Chris's arc in a way is unknown actor become the most famous superhero on screen till now, and then because of the accident, as a human being, become as weak as you can be. You can't breathe on your own. You can't go to the toilet. It's you can't. Most of your organs are non-functioning as efficiently as they should be because of the level of your injury, and how you rebuild that to become a hero for the world. So I think from the start, that was anyway going to be embedded in the film, and we were just trying to craft that. But how about how he affected our vision? Do you want to mention how he affected your vision?
I mean, I think you start realizing that it's not a film about a superhero. It is a film about an ordinary person who finds resilience and courage, that are very inspiring, because you or the two of us or anyone is going to experience loss, is going to experience disease or disability at some point in our lives. It's going to happen. And how do you confront that? How do you confront that adversity and incorporate it into your daily life, and your family's daily life and so on? And that became, that's a very inspiring story to tell, just for ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
and I think one of your first question about previous work and Rising Phoenix, I think we were ready for telling the story of Christopher Reeve and the Superman going all that way, because we had met so many people which might have been born able-bodied and suddenly a disease, war, victim of war crimes or an accident completely change and twist your life and turn the table upside down. I think what we had realized is that it is not about the accident, it's not about the disability, it's not about the level of disability, it's about the will, it's about the mental strength, it's about the desire to live for something, to move the needle. We're all born differently, and disability is another slight difference. And sometimes you just got to adjust within your life, and the people who adjusted the best and makes the best out of it tend to have the happier, fulfilled life. It's more people who struggle with it the longest. But again, struggling with it is part of the process. Everyone who acquires a disability, who is born with a disability, will feel so different from the rest of the world, because the world makes us feel different if we have a disability as well. And I think Peter and I, more than a message of how it changes, what we want the film to do is to keep changing or moving slightly the needle of society and make society, interrogate itself, and just like we need to be more inclusive, because we're more inclusive, people feel less rejected and feel part of the full conversation. And if we want to be a true good humankind, we need to include everyone at the table.
Well said. Thank you. Thank you for all of this and for making the movie. I mean, it's just a sign of how good the movie is that I feel like I could just keep going and going and asking you more and more. And there's a lot of things I feel like I've left out, but in a way, that's why people need to see it and be moved by it. Let the experience sort of take over, because it's very special, and especially, as you just said, in changing hearts and minds, or in just illuminating something that we might not know about. Well, thank you both. Best of luck. Congratulations. I want to say thank you to all our viewers for joining us today, and be the first to know about upcoming Wrap screenings. and get access to exclusive content and premium events by becoming a Wrap Pro member. Join now to take advantage of a free trial. And for all screenings, and including past screenings you may have missed, please visit TheWrap.com events tab. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much.